The rolling hills of south-central Kentucky hide a secret, or at least they did before people started putting all these signs up. Beneath the open grasslands and oak hickory forests, you'll find 426 miles of underground passages, making this the largest known cave system in the world. I'm Ryan with Focus on the Parks. Today, we'll learn about the caves, forests, and history of Mammoth Cave National Park. We'll offer some practical tips for visitors, and we'll see how Mammoth Cave stacks up against other parks in the park system. So let's get to it. Welcome to Mammoth Cave National Park. Mammoth Cave is certainly remarkable for its size, but not for its location. There are at least 5,000 cave systems in the state of Kentucky, with more being discovered every year. And inside the boundaries of Mammoth Cave alone, there are 300 distinct cave systems. And while Mammoth Cave may be the largest, it is by no means the only large cave system in the area. The nearby Fisher Ridge Cave System currently ranks 10th in the world at 134 miles of passages. Additional massive cave systems can be found from southern Indiana to central Tennessee. So just what makes this part of the country so dang holy? 330 million years ago, parts of the modern states of Kentucky, Tennessee, and Indiana were covered by a shallow sea. You can find evidence of these ancient seas embedded within the walls of the cave itself in the form of fossil corals, shark teeth, and other prehistoric marine life. Over the course of millions of years, layers upon layers of corals, sediments, shells, and marine debris compressed to form limestone, a class of sedimentary rock primarily composed of calcium carbonate. Most of the rocks in the Pennyroyal Plateau are limestone. 3 distinct layers of different ages and composition, along with a 4th, harder layer of sandstone, siltstone, and shale, called the Big Clifty Formation. The Big Clifty Formation is the youngest of the 4 and serves as a capstone over the layers of limestone. While the rocks of the Pennyroyal Plateau are hundreds of millions of years old, the caves themselves are considerably newer. As the top layer of the plateau was exposed to the surface around 10 to 15 million years ago, surface water began to seep through cracks in the Big Clifty capstone. Shale and sandstone are not particularly water-soluble. Under normal circumstances, neither is limestone. However, surface water is not pure water. It naturally reacts with carbon dioxide in the air and ground to form carbonic acid. So the water seeping through the cracks in the Big Clifty capstone is slightly acidic, and that acidity is strong enough to break down the calcium carbonate in limestone over thousands to millions of years. The role of the Big Clifty capstone is critical in this process, as it serves as a filter letting in just the right amount of water for cave formation. Too much water, and the limestone layers would wash out entirely, creating large sinkholes like this one. Not enough water, and the caves wouldn't form at all. The process is time-consuming, starting with the formation of small gaps between weaker sections of the limestone layers. But over the course of 10 to 15 million years, the simple reaction of carbonic acid and calcium carbonate has created deep underground canyons, flowing rivers, and hundreds of miles of passageways. As I record this video, Mammoth Cave officially contains 426 miles of passages. There's a good chance that by the time you're watching it, that number will have increased. But this wasn't always considered the largest cave in the world. In fact, it wasn't always even considered a single cave. So let's find out how it was all put together and see if there are any major pieces left. The earliest visitors to Mammoth Cave were Native Americans using simple cane torches starting around 3,000 to 4,000 years ago. These lengths of cane could burn for a surprisingly long time, and an explorer equipped with a bundle of cane sticks would be able to explore the caves for hours on end. The evidence of the extent of these explorations includes cane soot, footprints, poop, and even some human remains. As far as historical records go, there is no definitive account of a European discovery of Mammoth Cave, although there are a few legendary accounts that are probably apocryphal. We do know that as early as the late 1790s, the caves were being mined for their deposits of saltpeter, one of the primary ingredients in gunpowder. After the end of the War of 1812, demand for saltpeter dwindled, and locals began taking curious tourists through the caves as an alternative revenue source. A map created in 1835 shows the total length of passages at Mammoth Cave at around 8 miles. 3 years later, in 1838, a man by the name of Stephen Bishop would arrive at Mammoth Cave and take both exploration and tourism of the caverns to the next level. As an enslaved man in Kentucky, Stephen Bishop is an unlikely hero in the Mammoth Cave story. And I could probably spend a whole video talking about Stephen Bishop and his importance to Mammoth Cave and caving in general. But since this is a historical overview, I'll stick to the highlights. At the age of 17, Bishop was brought to Mammoth Cave by his owner, Franklin Gorin, who had just purchased the land surrounding the cave for $5,000. Bishop was a super sharp, self-educated man despite his circumstances, and when Gorin put him to work as a cave guide, he took to the job immediately. While he became quite proficient at leading visitors through the well-traveled tour route, he also began to explore obscure cracks and passages branching out from the main path. In his first year alone, Stephen Bishop more than doubled the known length of Mammoth Cave. And as his discoveries became more widely known, so did Bishop himself. Tourists and visiting scientists would come to Mammoth Cave and ask for Bishop by name, some specifically seeking out some wild and untouched portions of the cave. In his 19 years at Mammoth Cave, Stephen Bishop discovered many now famous features and passages within the cave, including the River Styx, Mammoth Dome, the Snowball Room, and Cleveland Avenue, detailing these and more on a very accurate hand-drawn map in 1842. He would eventually be set free in 1856, working as a paid guide until his untimely death of unknown causes a year later. With the death of Stephen Bishop, and shortly after the outbreak of the Civil War, discoveries within the Mammoth Cave system slowed down for a few decades. In 1895, Lute and Henry Lee discovered a cave to the northeast of Mammoth Cave along Flint Ridge. No doubt inspired by the name of their more famous competition nearby, they dubbed their discovery Colossal Cave, and promptly discovered a connection to the nearby Bedquilt Cave. Further key cave discoveries would be made along Flint Ridge, including Unknown Cave in 1903 and Crystal Cave in 1917. Meanwhile, in 1908, a German engineer by the name of Max Camper and his local guide Ed Bishop, thought to be the grandnephew of Stephen Bishop, set about creating an accurate map of the Mammoth Cave system. In doing so, they discovered several now famous features and passages in their own right, including Ultima Thule, Kentucky Avenue, and Violet City. All in all, they mapped about 35 miles of passages within the cave. The national park was authorized in 1926 and then formally established in 1941, but the next major discoveries wouldn't happen until the 1950s, and once again, they would happen up in Flint Ridge. In September 1955, two intrepid cavers by the names of Bill Austin and Jack Lerberger found a connection between Unknown Cave and Crystal Cave. 5 years later, Lerberger, Spike Werner, and Dave Deemer connected two other major caves in Flint Ridge, Salt's Cave and Colossal Cave. 1 year after that, Werner, Deemer, Judy Powell, and Bob Keller found a connection between these two systems, uniting them into a single Flint Ridge cave system. At this point, Flint Ridge had about 30 miles of passages mapped, making it the third largest in the world after Mammoth Cave and Hollach in Switzerland. By 1969, additional discoveries would more than double that figure, bringing Flint Ridge up to 65 miles in first place. The big connection, dubbed the Everest of speleology, would come in 1972. That summer, cavers deep in the Flint Ridge cave system discovered the signatures of Pete Hansen and Leo Hunt, two individuals who worked as cave guides at the neighboring Mammoth Cave in 1930s. Taking advantage of an exceptionally low water table that year, a group led by John Wilcox followed this passage, dubbed Hansen's Lost River, until they eventually came upon an old Mammoth Cave tourist handrail in Cascade Hall. Wilcox's team had finally connected the Flint Ridge system to the Mammoth Cave system, creating a combined total of 144 miles, the largest cave in the world, a title it has held ever since. Exploration did not stop once the two systems were connected. In fact, it accelerated. Since 1972, we've more than doubled the miles of passages within the combined Mammoth Cave-Flint Ridge system, and there's reason to believe there's more where that came from. Scientists estimate there may be as many as 600 additional miles left unexplored within the Mammoth Cave-Flint Ridge system. There are also quite a few caves in and near the park that remain unconnected to the Mammoth-Flint Ridge system. The Great Onyx Cave, for example, which can be visited by ranger-guided tour, lies within Flint Ridge but remains a separate cave. In fact, Great Onyx is so close to Mammoth that some of their passages overlap. There are rumors that Lucy Cox, who was co-owner of Great Onyx before its purchase by the Park Service, had some of its passages sealed off to prevent the sudden appearance of uninvited explorers from nearby caves. There are two additional massive cave systems that pass less than a mile from the known extent of Mammoth Cave. The Fisher Ridge system is currently 134 miles long and the fifth largest cave in the United States, and the Wigpissel system is currently 41 miles long and 15th in the country. Opinions are mixed as to whether connections between these systems and Mammoth Cave will ever be found. Ultimately, only time will tell. As the largest cave system in the world, Mammoth Cave is a vast ecosystem home to many unique animals. Some are found nowhere else in the world. Other species can be found in other caves in the park and elsewhere in the porous Penny-Royal Plateau. But this raises some interesting questions. Just how do cave species evolve? And once a species is adapted to the cold, dark environment of a cave, how could it possibly propagate from one cave system to another? In order to wrap our heads around the proliferation of cave life, we'll put these creatures into one of three buckets: troglozenes, troglophiles, and troglobites. A troglozene is an animal that spends some of its time in cave environments and some of its time outside of caves. Troglozenes are not adapted for long-term stays in cave environments. A great example of a troglozene in the park would be one of the 8 or 9 species of bat within the park that uses the caves for roosting at least part of the year. Bats may sleep, rest, or hibernate in caves, but they still venture out for food, and many species within the park roost outside of the caves for part of the year as well. Since bats and other troglozenes spend much of their lives outside of caves, they are quite capable of propagating from one cave to another. The next category of cave creatures is troglophiles, creatures who prefer to live within caves, but are capable of living outside of caves on either a short or long-term basis. One of the more ubiquitous of the park's troglophiles is the cave cricket. Cave crickets are opportunistic omnivores, living near the entrances of caves and feeding on plant matter, animal remains, or even other cave crickets. Troglophiles, like cave crickets, are adapted to life in caves, but capable of leaving caves in search of food, mates, or better habitats. So, like the first category, our second category is also fully capable of moving from cave to cave. You'll find the common cave cricket in caves, mines, and damp basements throughout the Penny-Royal Plateau. The third category of cave life is the troglobite, an animal fully adapted to spend its entire life cycle within a cave. Troglobites generally display extreme adaptations to dark cave environments, including loss of eyesight and loss of pigmentation. The park hosts a number of troglobite species, including cave beetles, cave fish, and the Kentucky cave shrimp, all of which are eyeless. As you might imagine, troglobites have much more difficulty propagating across cave systems than the other two categories, and most are only found within a very limited geographic area. The Kentucky cave shrimp is only found within the immediate vicinity of Mammoth Cave National Park. Others, such as cavefish, can be found in multiple cave systems, but only because they are able to navigate the vast underground aquifers that connect the Penny-Royal Plateau. It's easy to imagine that many or most troglobite species evolved from troglophile ancestors, and likewise, troglophiles evolved from troglozene ancestors. If a species spends more and more of its time inside a cave, adaptations are passed down from generation to generation, making that species more capable of spending more of its life inside a cave. After a certain point, life on the surface becomes impossible, and it becomes much more difficult for that species to propagate from cave to cave. While caves are undeniably what put this place on the map, the park protects over 52,000 acres and has over 80 miles of surface trails. That makes this the largest and most explorable cave-based park in the U.S. park system. So let's take a look at what lies above the largest cave system in the world. But first, let's take a moment to acknowledge that the park's cave systems and above-ground landscapes are not two disconnected entities. The same geological processes that form the caves below are also responsible for carving the landscapes up here. And what happens here has direct repercussions for what happens below. The dominant above-ground feature of this landscape is the Green River, which flows from east to west within the park's boundaries and roughly bisects the park. The park's underground rivers all ultimately drain into the Green River, and the river's water level provides the baseline for all waters within the cave itself. When the river's water levels are high, the cave's water levels are high. And when the river's water levels are low, the cave's water levels are low. As a result, many important cave discoveries have happened in drought years, when the water levels are at their lowest and more of the cave is explorable. The Green River is also notable for its recreation opportunities, including fishing and paddling. Between the Green and its tributaries, there are over 30 miles of navigable waterways within park boundaries, and a few nearby private concessionaires offer kayaks and canoes for rent. Much of the remainder of the park's surface area is forested. Before there was a park here, the area was largely farmland, so most of the park's forests are secondary growth over the last century or so, with more than 1 million trees planted by the Civilian Conservation Corps in the 1930s. It is not really known what vegetation covered the area prior to European American settlement, but today's park hosts more than 80 species of trees. These forests are generally mixed deciduous coniferous, with about a third of the park dominated by oak and hickory forests. These forest and river habitats are home to a wide variety of animals, including around 50 species of mammals, 170 species of birds, and 60 species of reptiles and amphibians. Wild turkeys and white-tailed deer are frequently seen by visitors. Black bear sightings are surprisingly rare, giving their ubiquitousness at some of Mammoth Cave's sister parks in the region. We've already gone over a lot of the park's history regarding the cave itself, so let's just spend a little bit of time going over how Mammoth Cave became a national park in the first place and how it has grown and flourished since. The first official effort to designate Mammoth Cave a national park came from Kentucky's congressional delegation in 1905. This early proposal did not get very far, and over the next 2 decades, the so-called Kentucky Cave Wars began as competition heated up over the various private show caves in the area. In February of 1925, the Mammoth Cave area was thrust into the national spotlight when a local landowner and caver by the name of Floyd Collins became trapped in Sand Cave when his leg was pinned beneath a 27-pound rock. The story ignited a media frenzy as the nation eagerly waited for updates over the course of his 18-day confinement. Collins ultimately died of exposure, exhaustion, and starvation right here in Sand Cave before rescuers could reach him. However, interest in the story brought more tourists into the region and put Mammoth Cave back on Congress's radar. Somewhat concurrently, Congress had authorized the U.S. Department of the Interior to establish the Southern Appalachian National Park Committee, or SANPC. The committee's express purpose was to create more national parks in the eastern part of the country, and between December 1924 and April 1926, the committee recommended the establishment of what would become Great Smoky Mountains, Shenandoah, and Mammoth Cave National Parks. These efforts succeeded, and in May of 1926, President Calvin Coolidge signed legislation authorizing the creation of all 3 parks. This legislation only authorized the creation of these parks. The parks themselves wouldn't be officially established until enough land was acquired to create a cohesive national park unit. In the case of Mammoth Cave, the park was established with a goal of 70,000 acres, a figure that the park has yet to reach and likely never will. Over the course of the next 15 years, the federal government would acquire land via donations, purchases, condemnations, and most controversially, eminent domain. It's estimated that around 500 families were displaced from the land surrounding the caves. Another displacement occurred within the new park's contingent of tour guides. Since the end of the Civil War, visitors to Mammoth Cave were escorted by generations of guides, some black and some white, working alongside each other. Many of the cave's black guides were descendants of enslaved guides from before the war. When the National Park Service took over operations in 1941, they chose not to retain the services of any black cave guides, ending a legacy that for some of the displaced guides had lasted as long as 4 generations. By 1941, the Park Service had acquired the minimum threshold of land in the authorizing legislation, about 45,000 acres, officially establishing Mammoth Cave National Park in July of 1941, although the park wasn't formally dedicated until after World War II in 1946. The park would spend the next decade improving the park's infrastructure, including the construction of the Mammoth Dome Tower in 1953 and the elevator entrance in 1957. The park's boundaries have also grown a little over the years, most notably with the 1961 addition of the Onyx Cave and Crystal Cave properties, which had previously been privately owned enclaves within the park. In 1981, Mammoth Cave was listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, the 8th in the United States, no doubt in large part due to its confirmation as the world's largest cave 9 years prior. The region's biodiversity did not go unnoticed by UNESCO, and in 1990, Mammoth Cave was declared the core of the 909,000-acre Mammoth Cave Biosphere region. Mammoth Cave isn't as far off the beaten path as most U.S. national parks, but you're still likely to want a car to explore it. The park's visitor center is about an hour-and-a-half's drive south of Louisville International Airport, and about the same distance north of Nashville International Airport. Most visitors traveling by air will want to choose one of these 2 options. Other national parks are at least a 4 to 5 hour drive away from Mammoth Cave, which is a good distance between stops on a road trip. Nearby Park Service sites include Abraham Lincoln Birthplace National Historic Park and Mill Springs Battlefield National Monument. Nolan Lake State Park is also nearby, along with a few private show caves in the vicinity of Mammoth Cave's gateway communities. Mammoth Cave is a year-round park. The park is most crowded in the summer months. Summers can be warm and muggy, with highs averaging in the mid-80s. Winters may bring snow and ice, with average highs in the low 40s. The park gets its highest rainfall in the spring. Cave tours are offered year-round, although the list of tours the park offers is a bit more limited in winter. Please keep in mind that regardless of the weather outside, the temperature inside the cave is a constant 54 degrees year-round. so depending on your comfort level, you may want to bring a jacket on your tour. Overnight opportunities are abundant at Mammoth Cave, with a wide variety of options to suit guests of a wide variety of tastes. Those who wish to camp will find 3 developed campgrounds, as well as a number of backcountry options as well. The largest campground, aptly called the Mammoth Cave Campground, has hot showers and flush toilets available. Another campground, Maple Springs, provides a limited number of electrical hookups. The park's 13 backcountry campsites offer none of these, of course, and must be accessed via hike, horse, or paddle. For visitors who are more comfortable sleeping with a roof and an HVAC, the Mammoth Cave Lodge offers rooms in historic cottages right in the park. The lodge also has dining opportunities, including coffee, grab-and-go, and a casual sit-down restaurant. The park also has 3 major gateway communities, Brownsville and the aptly named Cave City and Park City, each with a variety of hotels and camping opportunities for visitors. Tourists are able to access around 10 miles of cave passages on official tours. While that may seem like a small number compared to the hundreds of miles of passages within Mammoth Cave proper, that's literally miles beyond what you'll find in most show caves in the country. As a result, there are 21 different cave tours offered at the park, and figuring out which to book can be a challenge. So let's take a look at all the cave tours and highlight some of the differences. Please keep in mind that not all of the cave tours are offered year-round, so please check recreation.gov before your visit to see what's available. If you want a self-guided experience, your only option is the Discovery Tour. Visitors looking for an accessible experience with no stairs can take the Accessible Tour, which enters and exits the cave via an elevator. What sort of difficulty are you looking for? The park sorts its tours into 4 buckets: easy, moderate, difficult, and strenuous. Speaking of strenuous, are you looking for a wild caving experience with headlamps and tight squeezes? The park offers 3 crawling tours, although one of these, the Trog Tour, is for children only. For each of these tours, the park has strict requirements for shoes with thick treads, so please make note of this prior to booking. What age groups do you need to accommodate? Many tours work for all ages. Most of the rest are for ages 6 and over. The 3 wild cave tours each have more stringent age requirements. What length of a tour are you looking for? Many of the park's tours are 2 hours or less, with a decent number of extended options as well. Are you concerned about having restroom access during the length of the tour? These tours specifically set aside time in one of the park's 3 underground restrooms. Are you interested in taking one of the park's lantern tours for a historically authentic lighting experience? Are you looking for a tour with more of a historic focus? Or with more of a focus on science and scenery? Of the science and scenery focus tours, the Frozen Niagara and Great Onyx tours are your best bet for cave formations. Would you like to visit caves that aren't part of the main Mammoth Cave system, or at least as far as we know? These 2 routes tour separate caves in the park that are so far unconnected to Mammoth Cave proper. Are you simply looking to see as much of Mammoth Cave as possible? If so, you can see most of the tourable, non-wild sections of the cave with these 4 routes. If the Grand Historic Tour is being offered during your visit, you can substitute it for the Gothic Avenue and River Styx tours and get the number of tours down to 3. And of course, there's a lot more to Mammoth Cave than just the cave itself. The park preserves over 52,000 acres of land, including 80+ miles of trails and 30+ miles of navigable river. So if you're here for multiple days, consider spending some time in the above-ground portions of the park as well. All right, now that we've gotten to know the park, the cave, its history, and the best ways to experience it all, let's see how this park compares to other parks in the park system. First up are our 5 preservation categories, which grade the park on its natural and cultural resource protection. Expanse ranks each park on its size. Mammoth Cave is about 52,000 acres, which earns a 3 out of 10. Diversity counts and scores the number of natural and cultural resources at the park. Mammoth Cave has 19 resources based on the focus on the park's listing, which is enough to earn a 7 out of 10. Superlativity looks at how exceptional the park's resources are. Mammoth Cave hosts the largest cave system in the world, which is a great start. It also gets bonuses for being both a UNESCO World Heritage Site and a UNESCO Biosphere Reserve. Mammoth Cave earns a superlativity score of 8 out of 10. Biodiversity is a rating of the park's animal and plant diversity.
Mammoth Cave is among the most biodiverse parks in the entire park system, and it also hosts a number of species found nowhere else in the world. Mammoth Cave earns an easy 10 out of 10. Uniqueness compares the park's resources against other parks in the U.S. park system. Mammoth Cave has a decent collection of unique features, earning a 5 out of 10. Add these up, and Mammoth Cave gets a preservation subtotal of 33 out of 50. Next up are our 5 visitation categories, which rate the park on its visitor experience. Reachability scores how easy it is to get to the park. There are 5 parks within 6 hours of Mammoth Cave, along with pretty good airport access. Mammoth Cave earns an 8 out of 10. Interactivity counts and scores the number of activities available at the park. 16 activities from the Focus on the Parks list earns Mammoth Cave a 6 out of 10. Explorability is a measure of the park's trail, road, and visitor center infrastructure. Mammoth Cave has respectable road and trail mileage, and over 30 miles of navigable waterways as well, earning a 4 out of 10. Accommodations rates the park on its overnight access. Mammoth Cave has it all: lodging, developed camping, primitive camping, restaurants, you name it. That's enough to earn another 10 out of 10. Finally, scenery scores the park's natural beauty. This is a subjective score, the only one on the list, so feel free to substitute your own score here if you disagree with mine. Mammoth Cave is a pretty little park, both above ground and below, but there are certainly prettier parks in both categories. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Add up the visitation categories, and Mammoth Cave gets a subtotal of 34 out of 50. And adding up all 10, we get a final score of 67 out of 100.
Mammoth Cave is held back a little bit by its small size and lack of grand scenery, sure, but I still think this is a very respectable score. Visitors expecting just a cave and a campground are in for a treat. This park is a biodiversity hotspot with lots of great recreational activities, ease of access, and great stories to tell. It absolutely deserves its national park status, and it deserves to be on your itinerary as well. So that's all I've got for Mammoth Cave. If you found this video informative and helpful, I hope you'll consider throwing a like and a subscribe my way. Keep watching this space for more videos like this about other parks in America's park system. I hope I'll see you next time.